All right, let's pray. Father, as we begin tonight, we want to thank you for all the blessings you've given to us, especially the meal we have shared together. May you bless all those who are sharing tonight, and may you bless all those who are learning tonight about your grace and forgiveness in Jesus. May we truly celebrate the season and all that it means. It's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen. All right, first, I want to draw your attention to the single-page handout I gave you, because as I was working on Judges, it was very frustrating to get to the end of the book and realize that chronologically it's not given in order. So here I finally did some research and found this. So you look at chapter 1, which is like the fifth one down or sixth one down, 1 through 16. Go in chronological order of the judges. And there are 12 judges, and I've highlighted the 12 judges for you. But then at the end of the book, the writer to the book of Judges seems to tack on, here's what was going on before the judges. And that's chapters 17 through 21, because chronologically it comes before the judges. Okay. So the end of the book tells you how bad it was and why they needed judges. And when we get to the end of the book, it's horrible. It turns your stomach horrible. Okay? And I toyed with the idea of starting with chapter 17 and doing 17 to 21 and then jumping to chapter 1. To keep it chronological, we're not going to do that. We're going to start with chapter 1. So we get the 12 judges first, and then we get a whole lot of history of what's going on in the life of the people that is chronologically happening before the first judge is called. Any questions on that? Okay, I know it's confusing because I got to the end, working on the end, past Samson and Delilah, and get all these stories of what's going on that are events happening before the judges come along. And I had to go research, say, what is going on? And it's because the writer that put the book of Judges together kind of stuck this stuff on the end and said, here, you need to know this, but it's not chronologically the same.
Maybe he had ADD.
Something. Now,
Did Samuel, the husband Samuel, was the one that wrote the book of Judges?
it doesn't seem like Samuel, but maybe it is, because we're not given the name of the author. I don't know who that was. Okay. And then also, at the end, remind me to talk about what I got laying here before once you turn the camera off. It's Christmas gift stuff. So let's delve into it. So chapter 1, this is going to be not quite a verse by verse, because it would take like a really long time. So we're going to do kind of sections. It covers all the verses, but it's kind of sections. So we'll kind of go through it together. The book of Judges begins by speaking of the conquest of the promised land. So Moses dies. Joshua leads the people into the land. Okay. There's no hint of worship, the worship of pagan gods during the life of Joshua. As long as Joshua's leading the people are faithful. But the 12 tribes do not drive out the inhabitants of the land. There's the crux of it, because they were supposed to drive out the inhabitants of the land, and it's to be the land for just the descendants of Abraham, through Jacob, the Israelites. They don't do that. And because they don't do that, these pagan nations come back to plague them over and over again. So after the death of Joshua, the Israelites inquired of the Lord, who will be the first to fight for us against the Canaanites? Now we're going to start at verse 1. We're going to come to a point in the chapters that talks about Joshua still being alive. Because it's not exactly chronological. Okay? That's the challenge. So the Israelites had Moses as their leader for 40 years. Remember, Moses' life was divided up in 3 sections of 40. 40 years as prince of Egypt. 40 years living in the land of Midian at the base of Mount Sinai with Jethro and his first wife. And then 40 years leading the people. Joshua was chosen to lead the people across the Jordan and take possession of the land. Who were the 2 spies when Moses, because they go from Egypt to through the Red Sea to Mount Sinai. God establishes the covenant. They make a beeline to the promised land. They send in 12 spies. 10 come back and say, the land is too impossible for us to take. Who are the 2 that said, let's go take it? Joshua and Caleb. They're the only 2 senior citizens that enter the promised land. You realize that?
Yep.
Okay? Track with me here. God said as a punishment for the faithlessness of Israel that no one older than 20 years old at the time would enter into the promised land. So in the 40 years of wandering, because it wouldn't enter in, everyone that was older than 20 years old died in the wilderness, except Joshua and Caleb. So the oldest someone could possibly be going into the promised land is 60 years old, with the exception of Joshua and Caleb. Okay? Joshua was chosen to be the leader. Deuteronomy, and the Lord commissioned Joshua the son of Nun and said, be strong and courageous, for you shall bring the people of Israel into the land that I swore to give them. I will be with you. This is the first time the children of Israel have been without a designated leader appointed by God. When Joshua dies, they don't have a designated leader. They know they need God's guidance, so they'll go to him and inquire. Now this is that first generation that's still alive when Joshua died. You know, these are the ones that Joshua led in. Okay? Judah was a tribe. So the Lord answered, Judah is to go. I've handed the land over to him. Judah is the tribe to which the Messiah would come. Judah would be given victory by the hand of the Lord. Okay? So Judah, you know, they're inquiring. Who goes to fight? God says, Judah. All right? Judah, your brothers will praise you. Your hand will be on the necks of your enemies. Your father's sons will bow down to you. Judah is a young lion, my son. You return from the kill. He crouches, he lies down and like a lion or a lioness. Who dares to rouse him? The scepter will not depart from Judah, or the staff between his feet, until he whose right it is comes, and the obedience of the people belongs to him. It's a messianic prophecy that the Messiah is going to come through the line of Judah. And he's the lion of the tribe of Judah. You've heard that phrase before. Okay? So verse 3, Judah said to his brother Simeon. Now, Judah is not the individual. It's the tribe of Judah. It says to the tribe of Simeon, come with me to my allotted territory and let's fight against the Canaanites. And I also will go with you to your allotted territory. So Simeon went with him. When Judah attacked, the Lord handed the Canaanites and the Perizzites over to him. They struck down 10,000 men in Belzec. Okay, so 10,000 people died. Brutal hand-to-hand combat with swords and spears and clubs and whatever else they can use to kill people. Okay, the land was inhabited by multiple nations, but largely populated by the Canaanites. Who's the vast majority of the descendants of the land of Canaan? The vast majority come from Abraham's other son, Ishmael. So you have, you know, blood fighting blood in a sense, because they're all related. Now the reason Judah wanted Simeon to help, when you go to the division of the land, there's a map that shows that the land of Judah is a pretty big area territory, and the land of Simeon is right in the middle of it. So it made sense. It made sense for Judah and Simeon to fight together to conquer that section of the land together. So it was good strategy, you know, battle strategy, if you will, for them to fight together. And they found Adoni-Bezek in Bezek. Fought against him and struck down the Canaanites and the Perizzites. When the Adoni-Bezek fled, they pursued him, caught him, and cut off his thumbs and big toes. Adoni-Bezek said, 70 kings with their thumbs and big toes cut off used to pick up scraps under my table. God has repaid me for what I have done. They brought him to Jerusalem, and he died there. So this is a pagan king, and my point is, it's interesting that he sees the punishment he receives as justice brought against him for what he did. Now, it very well may be because you go to another era of history when Balaam, who's a prophet, you remember Balaam's donkey talks to him? Mm-hmm. And King Balak wants Balaam to curse the children of Israel, and God won't let him speak a curse. Okay? You know, the Balak knows that if Israel has the blessings of God, he doesn't have a chance. The people inhabiting the land see this group of Israelites who've crossed the Jordan or are coming across the Jordan, entering into their land. They're an invading army. There's all kinds of estimates. Was it 1 million, 2 million, or up to 6 million people came out of Egypt? They don't know. How many people were there 40 years after they wandered in the wilderness? More than came out, probably. So, you're talking about millions of people flooding in to this little tiny nation area of land. How big is the promised land?
160 by 60.
Yeah, roughly. About 148 miles north and south from Dan to Beersheba, and 65 miles or so at its widest point at the Dead Sea. It's a very small area of land, like here to Abilene. Okay, that's the entire north to south distance for the designation. It's a very small area of land. We got millions of people entering into it. It's noticed. So it could be like at another time they realize, this king is realizing that Israel's God is reaping vengeance upon him and bringing justice upon his head for what he did. 70 kings have had their thumbs and big toes cut off. Why thumbs and big toes?
Because provide balance, and
It's humbling.
it's humbling.
Yeah.
Thumbs are gone.
You can't hardly eat. You're scrounging on the ground and you can't walk.
Can't pick it up.
Can't pick it up and you can't walk.
Drop
It's
it
a
down.
it's a humiliating thing. And this king was humiliating these other kings. And so he himself was humiliated. Verse 8, the men of Judah fought against Jerusalem, captured it, put it to the sword, and set the city on fire. Afterward, the men of Judah marched down to fight against the Canaanites, who were living in the hill country, the Negev, and the Judean foothills. Okay? Now you see the area there that's designated on the map as the Negev. And you see Beersheba, which in the official designation of the land of Egypt, the land of Israel, is from Dan to Beersheba. Beersheba would be the southernmost end of the promised land, but the Negev goes much further. Okay? And I've got some pictures. That's what it looks like. Not much there.
Looks like our sand dunes.
Yeah, kind of.
So the Canaanites are the Philistines.
We're going to get to the Philistines in a minute. We're going to talk about them, all the people of the land. Canaanites were the largest group, but you've got about 8 different nationalities, if you will, living there, 8 different tribes. You get the Pezerites, the Canaanites, the Philistines, the Hittites, the Amorites, the Ammonites. You have all these tribes of people living in the land. Now it's interesting that here they fight against Jerusalem and they burn it, but they don't make that a major city yet. Okay? When does Jerusalem become the capital of Israel? Under King David. It's not until David. So you got the judges, then you have Samuel the prophet, and you have Saul as king, and then you have David becomes king, and then Jerusalem becomes the capital. But so it's a while before Jerusalem becomes the capital. Judah also marched against the Canaanites who were living in Hebron. Hebron was formerly named Kiriath Arba, I guess I say it. They struck down Shishai, and Hyman, and Talmai. I can say these words. So Shishai, one of the sons of Anak, perhaps an old Hebronite clan name. These show back up later. And it shows Hyman, one of the names given to those of the 3 children of the children of Anak. And Talmai, a clan, possibly the Armenian origin, generally reputed to be of gigantic height. Okay? Resident in Hebron at the time of the Hebrew conquest and driven out by Caleb. Who were the giants?
Philistines?
The Philistines.
Yeah.
So you're getting these intermingling. Okay? So you got the Dead Sea. These were evidently those whom the 12 spies called giants. Goliath would have come from this clan. Over here, Gaza. What's in the news today? The Gaza Strip, where they're fighting. Same region. Goes along the coastline here. The Philistines were primarily fishermen. They lived off the ocean. And they were giants, and it's in this region here. There's mountains in here. So this is the valley and the plains leading to the water. Then you have the mountains, and then come down over here to the plains again to the Dead Sea. I have a topographical map in a minute that I'll show you. It shows you the mountain regions, but you have these people all through the land. Okay. Now, from there they marched against the residents of Debir. Debir was formerly named Kirath Sepher. I always say these names. And Caleb said, whoever attacks and captures Kirath Sepher, I will give my daughter, Asha, to him as a wife. So Othniel, son of Kenaz, Caleb's youngest brother, captured him. And Caleb gave his daughter, Aksha, to him as wife. Othniel is the first judge. Okay? So, Caleb was a man of great courage who boldly followed God's command and trusted him. If you remember, I did a sermon and highlighted Caleb a while back, several months ago, and I made a point that Caleb is one of the oldest men, and when they cross into the promised land, he asks and requests of Joshua to go and fight against the toughest region, against the mightiest people. He takes the hardest battle as his own. He has that much faith, that much courage. You know, he trusts in God. And he's seeking to challenge the men of Judah to do the same. So his nephew, Othniel, becomes the first judge. What's interesting here, well, back up to Joshua quick. I'm still as strong today as I was on the day Moses sent me. As my strength was then, so my strength is now. For war and for going out and coming in. Now then, give me this hill country about which the Lord spoke on that day. For you heard on that day that Anakim was there, with great fortified cities. Perhaps the Lord will be with me, and I will drive them out just as the Lord has spoken. So he actually requests the toughest battle. When she arrived, this is Othniel's wife, she persuaded Othniel to ask her father for a field. She got off her donkey. Caleb asked her, what do you want? She answered him, please give me a blessing. Since you have given me land in the Negev, give me springs also. So Caleb gave her both the upper and lower springs. So what's interesting, and the reason I made the note there, is that normally daughters do not receive an inheritance. It only goes to the sons. And Caleb gives his daughter land with springs as an inheritance to his daughter. So very unusual action on the part of Caleb.
Very good dad.
Very good dad. And of course having the water was the key there. Okay?
Was there a class in seminary that you missed out on how to pronounce these names?
Yeah.
Jason.
I'm just asking because
Well,
I can't pronounce them either. So
it's they don't teach you that. I could go phonetically do it, that's the actual text.
Actually, we get an Israeli guy in here, he probably set us straight on something.
Probably so.
More than likely.
So, when she arrived, she put. Oh, I did that. Okay. The descendants of the Kenite, Moses' father-in-law, had gone up with the men of Judah from the city of Palms, to the wilderness of Judea, which was in the Negev of Arid. And they went to live among the people. So Moses' father-in-law Jethro, also known as Ruel, was the priest of Midian and a Kenite. So Moses' descendant, Moses' family by marriage, are with them. Now remember, I have told y'all, when they came out of Egypt, where did Moses get his second wife?
From Egypt.
Well, not from Egypt. She came out of Egypt.
She came out
but she
of
was
Egypt.
from Cush. She was from
Yeah.
modern day Ethiopia. She was a black woman because when Pharaoh let the slaves go, all the slaves left. So while all the Israelites came out of Egypt, the other nationalities that were slaves came out with them. And you had these other nationalities traveling the wilderness. Now some of them probably said, hey, I'm going home, and took off. But some of them stayed with Moses and the Israelites. And Moses eventually marries a woman who's not a descendant of Jacob and is a black woman from Ethiopia who's with the Israelites wandering in the wilderness. And so it shouldn't surprise us that when they come out and they go to Mount Sinai, and God does all that God does in Mount Sinai, that Jethro Zipporah, Moses' first wife, Zipporah, her father and other family tag along. Because they've been worshiping the God of Mount Sinai. And now the God of Mount Sinai has all of his people here, so they stay with him. So you get a reference here that Moses' in-law family is also still with the Israelites. Now you also see on there Jericho OT, Jericho NT. That's because Jericho OT, Old Testament, is the Jericho that Joshua destroyed.
The walls came down.
Yeah. The New Testament Jericho, Herod the Great built as a summer residence, basically, as another palace. And you see where Jerusalem's at. So he would go from Jerusalem to Jericho, had another palace there. It's called the City of Palms because of all the springs and the lush vegetation that's there. And so the New Testament Jericho was not built exactly where the Old Testament Jericho was. Now, one of the things that archaeology has discovered is and I think I've got it on here, somewhere in here, the tell. And in archaeological terms, the tell is the mound where Jericho's set, where they've excavated an archaeological stuff. The tell of Jericho, I think, if I remember right, it's about 50 feet high. So it was built way up high on a hill. And Jericho was a very defendable city when Joshua and the Israelites marched around it. What's interesting is if you attack a city and breach the walls, which way do the walls fall? In upon the city. Right? Collapse in upon the city. Archaeology has proven the walls of Jericho fell outward. God went poof, and all the walls fell outward.
In that so they could go in, it was a lot easier for them to go.
Well, it didn't matter. The point was that if the army is pressing against the walls and is going to breach the walls would finally crumble and cave into the city from the opposing army coming against it.
I know, but they marched around.
And blew the trumpets, and God had the walls
And the
fall down.
walls came down, which made it a lot easier for them to totally breach.
Yes, and that's my point. But the point is that archaeology has proven that they fell outward, which is not a normal thing. It's a miraculous thing. It's a God thing that they fell outward. And God caused all the whole walls just to fall outward, which makes no sense other than it's a miracle.
It made perfect sense to God.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Judah went with his brother Simeon, struck the Canaanites who were living in Zepheth, and completely destroyed the town. So they named the town Hormon. And you see, where's Hormon's down south, just bottom of the screen. So that's part of the region of Judah. Simeon's helping. Okay. And these are just, I'm trying to show you in the map what they're doing. They're going around and fighting in all these places and conquering the land step by step, if you will. Judah captured Gaza and its territory, Ashkelon and its territory, and Ekron and its territory. So you see Gaza is here. Ashkelon is here. And I don't think Ekron is on the map. I never did see it. Oh, it's over here. Okay. So, and Goliath was from Gath, remember? Okay. So this is all the Philistine territory that's marked there. And so, because it was up against the ocean, or the Mediterranean Sea, they were common, for them to make the living off the sea and stuff. And that area is where the Philistines continue to live and continue to plague.
Because they weren't driven out.
They weren't driven out. Now there's the topographical map. Now it's all in Hebrew because it's the one I can find. There's a few, you've got Gaza at the very bottom, Ashkelon there. You can see those we're just talking about. But see, this is plains, and then it gets very high mountains, and then goes down the other side. So it's very rugged, mountainous territory in between the Mediterranean Sea and the Dead Sea. And we're going to get to, this passage here. The Lord is with Judah and enabled them to take possession of the hill country, but they could not drive out the people who were living in the plain because those people had iron chariots. Chariots don't work well in the mountains, but in the plains, it's a formidable weapon. So they could not drive them out there.
Okay, which side of the mountain?
We're talking about the plains down toward the ocean.
Okay,
That's the area where they weren't able to, they conquered some of the cities, but they couldn't drive them all out.
Yeah.
There was also some areas where the Lord had told them to fight in a certain direction, and he had them a victory, and one of the reasons was because of, the land was kind of somewhat marshy or something, I guess, or spring or something, it rained, so it made it soft, and so they couldn't use their chariots or foot
But
soldiers.
that isn't in the book of Judges, though. That's in another place.
Oh, that's another plate? Oh, okay.
Not in Judges. Judah gave Hebron to Caleb, just as Moses had promised, and Caleb drove out the 3 sons of Anak who lived there, the 3 sons that we talked about before. So we're going kind of circular in our thoughts, okay? The writer of Judges is repeating what has been said, but this time with finality. He talked about the 3 sons of Anak. Now he's talking about Caleb drove them out, okay? When the time of conquest is over, the land promised to Caleb was given to him. When this was stated before, it was during the time of conquest. So you have the writer repeating and telling us, now this part of it is final. Okay? Now, that was Simeon and Judah. Now we got Benjamin. At the same time, the Benjaminites did not drive out the Jebusites who were living in Jerusalem. The Jebusites have lived among the Benjaminites in Jerusalem to this day. So we're back to Jerusalem again. They battled, they burned it, but then they didn't settle it, and so these people come in. Now, 1 Samuel 17, and David ran and stood over the Philistine and took his sword and drew it out of its sheath and finished him, and cut off his head with it. When the Philistines saw that their champion was dead, they fled. And the men of Israel and Judah rose up and shouted, and they pursued the Philistines as far as the valley, to the gates of Ekron. And the Philistine dead lay along the way to Sha'arim, even to Gath and Ekron. Then the sons of Israel returned from their close pursuit of the Philistines and plundered the camp. And David took the Philistine's head and brought it to Jerusalem, but he put his weapons in his tent. I put that in there for a reason. 1 Chronicles. And David and all Israel went to Jerusalem, that is Jebus, or the Jebusites, okay, the Jebusites. The inhabitants of the land were there. And the inhabitants of Jebus said to David, you shall not enter here. Nevertheless, David took the mountain stronghold of Zion, that is the city of David. Now David had said, whoever is the first to kill a Jebusite shall be chief and commander. Joab, the son of Zeruiah, went up first, so he became chief. And David lived in the stronghold, therefore it is called the city of David. But he built the city all around, from the Milo Emilio to the surrounding area, and Joab repaired the rest of the city. And David became greater and greater, and the Lord of armies was with him. So in 1 Chronicles 11, David finally conquers Jerusalem and takes it and makes it the capital of the Israelite people. That's not the 1 Chronicles 11. Here in 1 Samuel 17, David takes the head of Goliath to Jerusalem. And the Jebusites are there, and he taunts them with it. Okay, now here is the point. Why is Calvary called the place of the skull? Many have attempted to envision a skeletal face in the rock formations as the reason for the name. In all likelihood, David buried the head of Goliath on the hill outside Jerusalem as a message to the Jebusites who were living there that he was coming for them. And there is Golgotha, the place of the skull, and you go around and get all these pictures and look around. Yeah, you see some eyes and kind of a nose, and it kind of looks like a skeletal face. So they try to call it the place of the skull because of that. Why would they name it the place of the skull?
What if that's where
If David buried Goliath's head there,
he
took the head there and taunted him
Yeah.
with it, you know, the head of the champion, and buried it up there somewhere, it would be known as the place of the skull to the Jews, for sure. And so, more than likely, it was called the place of the skull because David took Goliath's head there and probably buried it there. Okay? And that's the thing. David is, what, a shepherd boy, right? He's a kid when he kills Goliath. He cuts off his head, killed Goliath with a sling, threw in a rock. Here's the tidbit for you. David went down to the river and got how many stones?
6 or 7, I think.
5, I believe.
Oh, 5.
Because when he went and fought Goliath, how many did he use?
3.
No,
One.
one.
Oh, yes, right.
1 shot, 1 kill.
But Goliath had one brother and 3 sons. If I remember right. I think he had a brother and 3 sons. Because later they're killed in other battles with the Israelites. And David when he took on Goliath, he said, I'm ready to take on the whole clan. I'm ready to take on Goliath's brother and his children, if I have to. He took 5 stones because there are 5 of them. He went prepared with confidence that if he had to fight more than one giant, he was ready.
He had enough ammo to do it.
And he's a shepherd boy. So when he cuts off his head, he takes the head and makes a beeline for the city of Jerusalem. He's fighting the Philistines, but he goes and taunts the Jebusites. Why? Because he already has it in his heart that God is going to use him to take the city of Jerusalem. And it's not until, after, because you got in 1 Samuel, you got Samuel talking about David killing Goliath. Who's king? Saul's king. And you have all these years that Saul chases David after he grows up, because he's a boy right now. And after he grows up, David has his 600 men, and Saul chases him all over the place and tries to kill him, because Saul is jealous of him. Remember the taunt? Saul has killed his thousands, and David has killed his 10,000s. And Saul is jealous. He wants to kill David. So it's after Saul's death, and the death of Jonathan, David becomes king, and then he goes back where he took Goliath's head and takes the city of the Jebusites, Jerusalem, and makes it the capital, makes it his home. There's a lot of history going on that's all tied together in this. And it all comes here because the Benjaminites did not drive out the Jebusites. Okay, they failed to do that. Okay? Then, the success of the house of Joseph. We're going to talk about tribes in a minute. Somebody needs to be watching the time for me because I don't have a clock. The house of Joseph also attacked Bethel, and the Lord was with them. They sent spies to Bethel. The town was formerly named Luz. The spies saw a man coming out of the town and said to him, please show us how to get into town, and we will show you kindness. Then he showed them the way into the town. They put the town to the sword, but released the man and his entire family. Then the man went to the land of the Hittites, built a town, and named it Luz. That is its name still today. So not unlike Rahab the harlot in Jericho, hid the spies. And then the tribes, there were actually 13 tribes of Israel. It was not a tribe of Joseph. Who were Joseph's children?
Manasseh and
Ephraim.
Ephraim.
So, if you look on the map, you have West Manasseh, and there is an East Manasseh on the other side over there. It's not showing this map, it'll show on another map in a minute. Because part of the tribe of Manasseh told Moses, hey, we like this land. We'll come over and help you fight, but we want this land. Manasseh was a big tribe. Okay, so they divided themselves in half. Ephraim is in the middle there. Those are the 2 sons of Joseph. Okay, well, who's missing? Who's not up there?
Probably not.
Levi.
Because they're a priest.
They're a priest.
They do not inherit land. They're given cities and pasture land for their animals, but they do not inherit regions of land because God took the tribe of Levi as his priests and said they will live off the offerings of the temple, the God's people. And so they're provided for by the offerings of the people. They do not inherit land. So there's 12 tribes of Israel are the 12 that inherit land, but there's a tribe of Levi that doesn't inherit land. So you take Levi out of the mix, you take Joseph out of the mix, and put in Joseph's 2 sons. Okay, so here you go. Sons of Jacob, Reuben, Simeon, Levi, Judah, Issachar, Zebulun, Dan, Naphtali, Gad, Asher, Benjamin, and Joseph. The tribes, they're the same, a little bit different. Reuben, Simeon, Judah, Issachar, Zebulun, Dan, Naphtali, Gad, Asher, Benjamin, then Ephraim and Manasseh. You take out Levi, take out Joseph, and add in Ephraim and Manasseh. Those are the 12 tribes that inherit land. Okay? Levi's not on that list because they didn't inherit land. Does that make sense? There's no tribe of Levi. Levi was a tribe, as a tribe, was chosen to be those who served God in the tabernacle and later in the temple. As such, they were provided for by the offerings of the people. Since they did not inherit land, they were not considered one of the 12 tribes. Here you go. Moses stood at the gate of the camp and said, "Whoever is for the Lord, come to me." And all the sons of Levi gathered to him. He said to them, "This is what the Lord, the God of Israel, says. Every man of you put on his sword on his thigh and go back and forth from gate to gate in the camp and kill every man and his brother, and every man his friend, and every man his neighbor." So the sons of Levi did as Moses instructed, and about 3,000 men of the people fell that day. Then Moses said, "Dedicate yourselves today to the Lord, for every man has been against his son and against his brother, in order that he may bestow a blessing upon you today." It was because of Levi's faithfulness at this particular episode that God selected them and chose them to be his servants. The Levitical priests, the whole tribe of Levi, shall not have a portion or inheritance in it with Israel. They shall eat the Lord's offering by fire and his property. They shall not have an inheritance among their countrymen. The Lord is their inheritance, as he promised them. Now this shall be the priest's portion from the people, from those who offer a sacrifice, either an ox or a sheep. They shall give the priest the shoulder and 2 cheeks and the stomach. You shall give them the first fruits of your grain, your new wine, and your oil, and the first fleece of your sheep. For the Lord your God has chosen him and his sons from all your tribes to stand and serve in the name of the Lord always. So, you get, what did I say, the shoulder, the 2 cheeks, and the stomach. You better like to eat stomach. And the grain, and new wine, and oil, and the first shearing of your sheep. I guess not every year, because the first time a sheep is shorn, they get that wool. Okay. All right, so that's why Levi doesn't inherit land. Joshua 14, the sons of Joseph were the 2 tribes, Manasseh and Ephraim. They did not give a portion to the Levites in the land except cities to live in, with their pasture lands for their livestock and for their property. And the sons of Israel did exactly as the Lord commanded Moses, and they divided the land. So the house of Joseph received a double portion of blessing from God. Just as Joseph was the favored son of Jacob, God blessed Joseph and his descendants, and he blessed his descendants. So where all the sons of Jacob get 1 portion of land, Joseph, the favored son of Jacob, gets a double portion of land. Don't ask me why, it's the way God did it.
If God wanted you to know, he would have told you.
Yeah. All right, so back to Judges. At that time, Manasseh failed to take possession of Beth Shean and Tanakh and the surrounding villages, or the residents of Dor, Ibleam, and Megiddo, and their surrounding villages. The Canaanites were determined to stay in the land. So Manasseh doesn't purge the people out of the land, and as a result, Canaanites are going to continue to plague the people. Land of Manasseh, when Israel became stronger, they made the Canaanites serve as forced labor, but never drove them out completely. So you have a big region compared to some of the others from Manasseh. Evidently, and you see right at the very top of the screen where it's cut off, it says Manasseh again, that's the other side of the Jordan. They got a bunch of land. At the time, Ephraim failed to drive out the Canaanites who were living in Gezer. So the Canaanites had lived among them in Gezer. All right, so Ephraim, when you look at where Gezer is, right at the bottom of their land, right where it connects with Dan, they drive them out. So all the writer of the Judges is telling you over and over again is these pagan peoples are still in the land. Okay? Zebulun did not drive out the inhabitants of Kitron, or the inhabitants of Nahol. So the Canaanites lived among them and became subject to forced labor. Okay, so you have Zebulun, which is on the left, the purple. You know, you're hearing all of them say the same thing. Asher fell to drive out the inhabitants. The residents of Ko, or Sidon, or Alab, or Akzib, or Helabah, or we'll keep reading. In verse 32, and the Asherites lived among the Canaanites who were living in the land because they failed to drive them out. Naphtali did not drive out the residents of Beth Shemesh, or the residents of Beth Anathah. They lived among the Canaanites who were living in the land, but the residents of Beth Shemesh and Beth Anathah served as their forced labor. So Naphtali. So we're just repeating ourselves. The Amorites forced the Danites into the hill country. Didn't allow them to go down into the valley. So the Danites failed totally. Okay? And they began to suffer the consequences of leaving them in the land. The Amorites were determined to stay in Haris, Aijalon, Shalabin. When the house of Joseph got the upper hand, the Amorites were made to serve as forced labor. The territory of the Amorites extended from the Scorpion's Ascent, that is, from Selah upwards. And you see the red balloon thing at the top, Selah. Don't ask me exactly why they called it the Scorpion's Ascent. I don't know the answer to that, but it's there in the text. So all these, you've got, again, the division of the tribes, but all of that is filled with the Canaanite peoples. Now, why is that important?
Because it shows that one, when you don't obey God, you're going to have a thorn in your side because you disobeyed.
Yeah. So there's the map divided up again, pretty much the same. There you can see East Manasseh and West Manasseh, and Manasseh in the land. Gad is on the other side of the Jordan. Reuben's on the other side of the Jordan. Those were good lands, and they wanted those lands. And so those maps are not exactly the same because nobody can look back in history and get the exact boundary lines, if you will. We know generally where they're at. So now we start the Judges. So all that was introduction, just for you to see that they went in to conquer the land and they didn't do it.
God is going to take
Been
care of
paying for it since.
Yeah. So you got the 12 judges, and notice the 12 judges are regional. Nobody judges the whole nation. Okay? Samson, you see where he's at over in Philistia? Who's he dealing with? Philistines. Okay? Gideon up in the middle? Who's Gideon with? The Midianites. All right? You got these judges, and they each deal with their clan in a regional way. Okay? Nobody judges the whole nation. The nation is in chaos. The reason I printed these out like this is so you could actually, well, it's not very big, you can see at least have a picture of the maps. That's why what I printed out is a lot bigger than normally I would print. I'd usually do an outline form, but there's so many maps to show you this stuff. How are we doing on time?
It's
7:14.
7:14.
Good. All right. So now we're to chapter 2. Okay? Now the angel of the Lord went up from Gilgal to Bochum, and he said, I brought you up from Egypt and brought you into the land that I swore to give to your fathers. I said, I will never break my covenant with you, and you shall make no covenant with the inhabitants of the land, of this land. You shall break down their altars, but you have not obeyed my voice. What is this you have done? Now we're going to take a little hiatus here about the angel of the Lord. Okay? Bochum is possibly Bethel. Okay? Is that possible? It's actually the city of Bethel. Bethel is an extremely important location. Bethel was first mentioned in the Bible in connection with Abram, who built an altar to God there. From there, Abram went toward the hills east of Bethel and pitched his tent, with Bethel on the west and Ai on the east. There he built an altar to the Lord and called on the name of the Lord. After visiting Egypt, Abram returned to Bethel and offered a sacrifice to God. Historians think that Bochum is possibly Bethel. Whether they're right or not, I don't know, but they seem pretty sure. And Gilgal, you see where it's at in relation to Jericho. Now, the angel of the Lord, this is something that I think is important that we understand. It's the angel of Yahweh. Okay? Melech, it just means messenger. Yahweh is the proper name for God. Okay? So the word Yahweh is the proper name for God. It should be given in the Old Testament. Somebody needs to proofread my stuff. The name the Jews feared to speak lest they break the commandment. The messenger of Yahweh is not simply an angel, but much more. Now I want to, the word angel just means messenger. That's all what angel means. Now, I want to just real quick, Bobby tried to show you this, or talk about this in a sermon one time, I think. See, this is the word Yahweh. See the two dots there and the thing looks like a little T? Those are the vowels. The bigger letters are consonants, okay? The vowels are under the letter, okay? So when you take what looks like two little dots and a little T away, and you take the word Adonai, which means Lord in Hebrew. So like Psalm 110, the Lord said to my Lord. Yahweh said to Adonai is what it says in the Hebrew, in Psalm 110. Yahweh, typically in your English Bibles, all capital letters, capital L-O-R-D, all caps, Yahweh. The Lord said to my Lord, Adonai, sit at my right hand, so I make your enemies a footstool for your feet. It's a messianic prophecy. Take away the vowels from Yahweh and insert the vowels from Adonai. You know what it creates? The word Jehovah. The word Jehovah does not appear in the Bible. It is not a biblical word.
It's a personal name, right?
No, it's a made-up name. The Jews were so scared of saying the name Yahweh, lest they break the commandment, you shall not take the name of the Lord your God in vain, that when they came to reading in the text, they would say, and said, and they point to the sky, and you knew to insert Yahweh, because they wouldn't say it. Then they came up with this idea of exchanging vowel points, so they could say Jehovah, so they wouldn't have to say Yahweh. It was a substitute for Yahweh. So all these people that talk about Jehovah's this and Jehovah that, doesn't even appear in the Bible. It's Yahweh. Jehovah is a made-up name because they were scared to say the name Yahweh. They feared God so much. That shows you how far they got away from the relationship with God, which is what he wanted. They were living in fear of God. That they would actually mispronounce the name Yahweh on purpose or create a different word so they wouldn't have to say it. Okay?
And it's not even in the New Testament.
No, nowhere. The word Jehovah does not exist in the Bible. You go Google it, you'll get Jehovah, all kinds of stuff, but it actually is a substitute word for Yahweh.
So like when people say like Jehovah Jireh and all these other things, they're not even, they exist.
Doesn't exist. Okay. All right. Now,
Is the angel of the Lord? We're going to answer that question. You can also discover more on gotquestions.org. The precise identity of the angel of the Lord is not given in the Bible. However, there are many important clues to his identity. There are Old and New Testament references to angels of the Lord, an angel of the Lord, and the angel of the Lord. It seems when the definite article the is used, it is specifying a unique being, separate from the other angels. The angel of the Lord speaks as God, identifies himself with God, and exercises the responsibilities of God. In several of these appearances, those who saw the angel of the Lord feared for their lives because they had seen the Lord. Therefore, it is clear that in at least some instances, the angel of the Lord is a theophany, an appearance of God in physical form. The appearances of the angel of the Lord cease after the incarnation of Christ. Angels are mentioned numerous times in the New Testament, but the angel of the Lord is never mentioned in the New Testament after the birth of Christ. There is some confusion regarding Matthew 28:2, where the King James Version says, "The angel of the Lord descended from heaven and rolled the stone away from Jesus' tomb." It is important to note that the original Greek has no article in front of angel. It could be the angel or an angel, but the article must be supplied by the translators. Other translations besides the King James Version say it was an angel, which is the better wording. It is possible that appearances of the angel of the Lord were manifestations of Jesus before his incarnation. Jesus declared himself to be existent before Abraham, so it is logical that he would be active and manifest in the world. Whatever the case, whether the angel of the Lord was a pre-incarnate appearance of Christ or an appearance of God the Father, it is highly likely that the phrase "the angel of the Lord" usually identifies a physical appearance of God. That answers the question, who is the angel of the Lord? On our website,
Now, stop for a second and talk about that. There are numerous places in the Old Testament where God shows up in a human form. God came walking in the garden in the cool of the day. That is, he's walking, okay? It doesn't say he was hovering over the ground or he appeared, he's walking. The three angels come, three visitors to Abraham. And two of them go into Sodom, and they are angels. They strike the men of Sodom blind. Abraham is left standing before who? Yahweh.
Yahweh.
Before God, who's come and appeared to him. Gideon comes out of the threshing grain in the winepress, the commander of the army of the Lord. Okay? And he bows down before him. An angel never accepts worship in the Bible. The angel of the Lord will. The angel of the Lord. So there's a handful of times, and they're typically called theophanies, where God shows up in a human form prior to Bethlehem's manger. I've never split hairs whether it's a Christophany or a theophany being the Father. I think it's always a Christophany. The theophanies are Jesus coming prior to Bethlehem's manger. That's the way I've always understood it and taught it. But it's interesting that here in this text, now the angel of the Lord went up from Gilgal to Bochum. Okay, from Gilgal. Okay, that's where he's at, and he goes and talks to them about their failing to drive out the inhabitants. So God's showing up to say it's time to do something different. Okay? So now I say I will drive them out before you, but they shall become thorns in your sides, and their God shall be a snare to you. As soon as the angel of the Lord spoke these words to all the people of Israel, the people lifted up their voices and wept, and they called the name of that place Bochim, and they sacrificed there to the Lord. So it's a place of weeping. They realized they messed up.
You had said the angel of the Lord accepts worship.
Mm-hmm. The angel of the Lord. The angel of the Lord. An angel, a regular angel, when he comes, they don't. They refuse to. But the angel of the Lord will.
And it's in the Old Testament.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And like Samson's, Elkanah, his father, and his mother, the angel of the Lord appears to her out in the field. She goes and tells her husband, he prays God, please send back the guy that came to talk to my wife, because I need to confirm what he said. So she's out in the field again, he comes again. And she says, please stay here and go get my husband. She runs and gets her husband, brings him back, and they prepare a sacrifice, and he steps into the smoke, the fire, and ascends with the smoke, and they fall down and worship and say, we're going to die because we've seen God. Okay? I mean, they're terrified. Exodus. I will set your borders from the Red Sea to the Mediterranean Sea, and from the wilderness to the Euphrates River, for I will place the inhabitants of the land under your control, and you will drive them out ahead of you. You must not make a covenant with them or their gods. They must not remain in your land, or else they will make you sin against me. If you serve their gods, it will be a snare for you. So they were to drive them out. Numbers. Speak to the sons of Israel and say to them, when you cross the Jordan into the land of Canaan, you shall drive out all the inhabitants of the land from you, and destroy all their idolatrous sculptures, destroy all their cast metal images, and eliminate all their high places. And you shall take possession of the land and live in it. For I've given the land to you to possess it.
Okay, now all of this, when he's talking about that from Numbers and
In Exodus.
It is all referring to after they have crossed into
When they go into the
Canaan
land,
and
this is,
they refuse to drive everyone out.
they just stopped. They didn't. They didn't drive them out. God told them over and over again, drive them out. There'd be nobody in the land but the children of Israel. And they left them in the land. They wouldn't drive them out. They either couldn't at some places because they didn't do it God's way, or they refused to. Hey, these people we are slaves. We'll keep them here. Okay?
And that's not what they were told to do.
Right.
They're told to annihilate them, wipe them
Yeah.
out.
Oh,
When Joshua dismissed the
pretty
people,
harsh.
the people of Israel went each to his inheritance to take possession of the land. And the people served the Lord all the days of Joshua and all the days of the elders who outlived Joshua, who had seen the great works that the Lord had done for Israel. And Joshua, the son of Nun, the servant of the Lord, died at the age of 110 years. Now that's chapter 2, verses 6 through 8. All through this, the first chapter, we've not heard about Joshua.
Right.
So chronologically, we're kind of flip-flopping. He's telling us that the people were faithful during that first generation. And all that generation were also gathered to their fathers. And there arose another generation after them who did not know the Lord or the work that he had done for Israel.
Bless you. Thank you.
So what's the problem?
The faith has not been
Or
in
it's the
it.
God were forgotten.
And
the faith
they
has
did
not
not
been passed
obey.
down. The faith was probably not, according to that, they didn't pass it down like they should have, explaining, you need to keep this because of this.
Keep the commandments. Here's what God told us to do to drive the people out of the land. By this time, the land should have been driven out. Okay?
And they're still trying to drive them out today.
Yeah. So they did not. Now, I'm putting here, do we see this today? What is the effect?
Well, you always see it today,
Okay.
because our faith is not being handed down to the next
Well,
generation.
Christianity is kind of
I'm
strange.
shutting the door for a second because I want to tell you something.
We're kind of
The kids we have here in the church right now, the teenagers upstairs, they do not know the Christmas story. They do not know it's Jesus' birthday. They're being taught that tonight. They do not know what Easter is. When they were asked what Easter was, that's when Jesus died. They didn't know that Jesus rose from the dead. In the discussions last week, they didn't know Jesus rose from the dead. They are ignorant, in the proper sense of the word, of all biblical knowledge. So as you're interacting with these kids, help them understand. Because that's our challenge, because the faith has not been handed down. We have young people in our midst who know nothing of the Bible. The basic foundational things, they don't know. They don't know.
The thing is, Christianity and Judaism have a parallel similarities in the fact that we fail in areas that they did just as well.
All right, so right here where it says the people of Israel did evil in the sight of the Lord and served the Baals, we're going to stop here because now we get into pagan worship. And we're going to start talking about the pagan worship. And I've got some pictures of the pagan gods, their idols that have been found from that era. Okay, these are their statues and stuff. So we're gonna stop here. Now I'm gonna turn the camera off for a second. I need to talk to y'all. We got about 2 minutes left.